now that you've seen what a coaching approach in a conversation looks like, you're going to give it a go and begin to practice actually having a coaching conversation with the person that you're teamed up with. So we just want to give you a few pointers. First, let's talk about some ideas on how to get a coaching conversation started. So they're in your book. If you're working with someone who's not sure where they'd like to develop, but would like to do so, use the development topics checklist in advance. And there's a link there that you can actually use to email that list of topics to someone ahead of time. And so they can look over some potential areas where they might like to develop. And just the opportunity to look at a list of these are some potential development areas will begin to stir up some thoughts. And then when you sit down to have a conversation, then you've got something to begin with. Another idea is if the other person initiates the conversation. So it may be that another person comes to you and says, hey, I've got a challenge that I'm dealing with, or I've got a problem that I want to talk through. Let them know, okay, I'd just love to hear your thoughts first. I'd just love to ask you some questions and let you process what you're thinking and what you might want to do. And I'd be glad to add my input in a little while, but I want to hear from you first. So if someone comes to you with something to talk about, that's a great way to get the conversation started using a coaching approach. And then the third is that sometimes you're going to initiate the conversation. So if you have either a specific opportunity for development that you want to lay out for someone, or maybe a problem that you want to surface and you want them to begin to think about how to develop in, then you go ahead and begin by framing the issue that you'd like to talk about. And then let the other person know, hey, I'd like to help you think through what you'd like to do. And I want to help pull the best out of you, but here's the topic that we really need to talk about. So in particular, when you're in a leadership situation and you recognize there's something here that a person really needs to think about, it's okay to put it out there on the table and then say, now, how can I help you think about your next steps? So those are some ideas on how to get the conversation started. So let's talk a little bit more about questions. Jerry, how can you ask questions that really create a powerful conversation?
Well, I think that questions can be powerful, and using them to be powerful is something I like about coaching, because it's really a simple concept, but you apply it well and you can really make a significant difference. So let's just take a look historical figure that everybody would say this person is probably a killer developer. And let's take a look at Jesus, all right? And Jesus, when you look at the Bible, Jesus asked 307 questions as he went through this, 307 questions. And people asked him 183 questions, all right? So he asked 307 questions, and then people asked him 183 questions. Now, how many of those 183 questions did Jesus answer directly? 183 questions asked, how many did he actually answer? Right? 3. He only answered 3 questions directly. All of the other ones he answered with another question. So that's just a great example of how a coach can really help draw out and help people come to a new perspective. And so let's just talk about some real simple things about, okay, how can we make our questions more powerful? The first thing is to ask open-ended questions. Who, what, when, where, and how. All right, that just helps people begin to process, and you want them to process, so the more open-ended we can come and the more question forces that person to articulate and process, I think the more powerful that question is. The next thing is to begin broadly. And maybe in the demonstration you saw people begin broadly and then begin to narrow and narrow and narrow to where it becomes more specific. So begin broadly and then focus increasingly on detail. Broad questions, and then when you get onto something, then begin to focus it and funnel it down until you really help. Because what you're doing is you're helping the person gain clarity when you do that. And then the third thing is seek out and explore discomfort and assumptions. So as a coach, when I'm coaching somebody and I see something that causes something to be uncomfortable, I'm going to probe into that a little bit more. Just like, when a doctor says, okay, does this hurt? And you say, yeah, that hurts. Okay, so he focuses on that, right? So kind of the same thing. And then assumptions. When you see people assumptions, when they say things like always or never, or I can't do that, or then when you see somebody making some assumptions, come back in and challenge those assumptions with some more questions, just again, to help that person become conscious that, because the thing with assumptions, we don't always realize that we're making them. So those are just some things that you can do to make questions more powerful and to use them more effectively. And so just now we've asked the question, okay, now how do we listen more effectively? That's a big part.
It is a big part. And so just stop and think about how many assumptions you bring into a conversation. How many ideas you have about a situation that it's so easy just to project on the other person that you're talking with. So to help you think about this, let me share an example with you. There was a kindergartner class that was asked to finish some well-known statements. And so you're going to recognize these, and let's see what the kindergartner said. A penny saved is, but a kindergarten class said, not much. What about this one? Children should be seen and not, but kindergartner said, spanked or grounded. And here's another one. You get out of something only what you, and a kindergarten class said, only what you see in the picture on the box. And then here's the last one. If at first you don't succeed, and the kindergarten kid said, get new batteries. So here's the idea. We have ideas and assumptions and perspectives that we've built up over time. And in a conversation, it's so easy to just assume the other person is thinking and feeling the same thing that we are. That's why listening is so important. The ability to listen so you really understand the unique point of view that another person has is, you just can't underestimate it. It's critical. It's a critical part of developing people. So a few suggestions. Ask additional clarifying questions. And you probably saw this in the demonstration conversation that you just watched a little bit ago. So ask questions. Well, what do you mean by that? Additional clarifying questions. Pay attention to non-verbal cues like posture and body language. When you see something there, then pay attention to maybe what that body language might mean. Listen for emotions and then follow that trail. When someone is expressing emotion, there's something behind that emotion. So ask questions about it and explore it a little bit further. Another idea is to repeat what you hear the other person saying and restate it in different terms. And you probably saw this on the demonstration conversation as well. Oftentimes, just saying back what you're hearing tells the other person, hey, I'm paying attention. And oftentimes, it's good for them to hear their words coming back, and that helps to create clarity. And then use laser phrasing to distill what you hear into single statements. So you can take a 2 or 3 minute segment of a conversation and really distill it down into a laser statement and lay it out there, and so some clarity in the conversation begins to emerge. And then allow times of silence so that the other person continues to talk or reflect. And that's okay. Don't feel uncomfortable with a few seconds or even a minute of just silence so a person can talk and think and reflect. Okay, so keep those tips in mind as you begin now to put a coaching approach into practice as you're giving it a go with the person that you're teamed up with.